Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. Thank you for checking out my video. This is one of my favorite segments on the channel, which is community questions. I opened up a little questionnaire thing, which, I mean, you could hardly call it a questionnaire really, because it just said, what questions do you have? And I got some questions that I now get to answer. And I'm very excited. Some really, really fun stuff here. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. I really appreciate it. If you want to skip around this video, you can hover over the timeline and the questions, like little snippets of the questions, will pop up and you can go to what you'd like. Those links are also in the description, where you can also find out about how you can support my channel. One of the many ways is Patreon, where you can get, in fact, MP3s or PDFs of these practices. But let's begin. Hi, Jeff. I follow your channel and I really enjoy your videos on the break. Quick note, this was supposed to be a community. I got this question and I was going to put it into a different segment, but I've co-opted it here because I was shooting this today. So hopefully you will find this. Enjoy your videos on the break. I have a question. While rehearsing on this topic, I'm not exactly sure what that sentence means, but I feel my passaggio zone gets better if I maintain the same resonance all the time. Now, here's the key. For me, adding a bit of nasal resonance helps me to better blend the chest with the head. I prefer to describe that differently, and my hope is that this individual is doing it correctly, but we'll get on with the rest of the question. Can I actually say that keeping a constant resonance helps to blend the register, especially in the break zone? Thank you. Yes, you can say that for you. It might be different for someone else. It is relative to where they are beginning from. And it also depends too on how you're doing this, if it's really truly productive. And it would be, I don't know this individual's voice. So I am hoping that what's happening here, and obviously I'm going to demonstrate around my break, my secondo passaggio, which is in this F sharp area right above middle C. So I'm going to show you leading up to it and then going over it. Now, my hope is that they are saying nasal resonance, but what they're actually generating is pharyngeal resonance. This is the brilliance or singer's formant of the voice. And you can hear its production really clearly in exercises like the NG sound. Now, if I did not keep that resonance moving through my zona di passaggio and over my secondo passaggio, and the secondo passaggio is the break, it would sound like this. And if you have a vocalist that's doing what I just did, their voice would sound like this when they made the registration shift. I'll use A and Ah. And you can really clearly hear that color change as I make my way over the secondo passaggio, over the break. And then when I come back down, I get back into that more brilliant sound. But the thing is that if we can learn to do that pharyngeal resonance with like the NG sound, we will have more consistency of tone across the break. Because a large part of maintaining that resonance has to do with how we are adjusting the adduction and elongation of the vocal fold. So we're looking at that resonance, And maintaining it is helping us to allow the vocal fold to elongate and only adduct as much as is absolutely necessary without abducting or separating. So if I allowed it to separate, it gets very breathy and falsetto sounding. And the question might be, well, how do we transition between the two? How do you use that NG sound to learn to maintain that pharyngeal resonance, but then transition into the vowels? Well, do half the scale with it and then half without. Generally speaking, releasing it to A or Ah are the two easiest vowels to get started with. So you could do or working your way up to solid vowels back and forth across the secondo passaggio or across the break. I hope that helps. Will cardio workouts help me on my breath control and lung capacity? As I age, I find I'm out of breath on some songs. Generally speaking, no, it won't. Lung capacity, despite sort of what is often talked about, you get what you get. You can't really expand your lungs any more than what you get. They are these sacs. And what you can do if you try to expand them too much, if you try to force yourself into greater capacities, in fact, tear it a little bit. And you can end up with a little bit of scar tissue at some of the expansion points. I know this because this happened to me. What you can do, now let's back up for a second here. Cardio is great. Cardio is good for our health. And while I realize that maintaining muscle mass as we age becomes an ever-increasing priority because we're going to lose muscle mass as we really start to age, but we want to start off with a goodly amount so we still have plenty. Cardio is good too. And maintaining a healthy cardiovascular practice, I think, will increase your overall health. So in as much as that will increase your health and maybe some of your muscle mass around the core of your body, doing some intensive walking or jogging or whatever it may be, that will certainly help. What you can do, and this sometimes looks like you are working on lung capacity, but what you are working on is the efficiency of your management of the airflow. So working with the adduction of the vocal fold and especially at the tonal onset. How do we do this? If you are evaluating your vowels, one of the best ways to do it is with like an arpeggio followed by a scale. We, What you do there when you do an exercise like that is the short syllables help you to find the most efficient shape and balance of airflow and vocal fold engagement. And then the scale, you get to see if you can maintain it. And if you maintain it, then you can challenge yourself to do the scales without the short exercise that precedes it and see if you can maintain it there. If you're doing the same length of phrase, for example, if I sang we, but I came up dramatically short of air on the second one, and I realized I sang the arpeggio melismatically, so I was maintaining the pitch as opposed to doing the short notes. But if I came up much less, if I had much less air at the end of that, then it might be looking into how you are maintaining your engagement, how you are maintaining the efficiency of the adduction of the vocal fold, of the shapes of your vowels while you're singing those exercises. Tonal onsets are the beginnings of phrases, and typically speaking, that is the point at which we stand to lose the most amount of air kind of for nothing, like it just sort of escapes the body before the vocal fold fully adducts and starts to produce tone. So exercises that work on the coordination of the flow of air and the adduction or closure of the vocal fold are really helpful here. One of my favorites, and this is it's in several videos. I've been having a hard time with the cards lately, so I'll find one and I'll put it in the description. That was also in a community questions some time ago for when someone asked me about the best vocal exercise that I knew of. I really like that exercise. You'll notice it's a short note, H and the IPA syllable for E, which is an I. So he, take a breath, he, and what you're getting practice at is adduction of the vocal fold, take a short breath and open the vocal fold, re-adduct it. And you get to practice this over and over again, and then the scale at the end is to let you see how well you've done. If the scale has got nice tone quality, it's very consistent, and you're getting around to the front end of the next exercise without feeling like you've lost too much air, you can get into that first articulation and start regaining some breath back in the short breaths, then you're probably doing quite well. Even if you're doing well, that exercise still does so much for the coordination of the onset of the flow of air and the adduction of the vocal fold that it's worth making a part of your regular practice. The end result of these increases in efficiency are longer phrases. And so it can kind of have the appearance of increasing lung capacity, but what you're really doing is increasing efficiency. So my suggestion is, by all means, do the cardio and be healthy and good, but focus on vowel alignment, maintenance of your engagement, and the overall efficiency with which you are using your voice, and that will hopefully help you with those phrases. It seems singing above the secondo passaggio takes more attention and is harder than singing in chest voice. High notes can deteriorate with fatigue by the end of a long musical play. So does that mean one should be careful to avoid singing or practicing too much in head voice? Or does it mean if it's so much work and vocally exhausting to sing up there, you're doing it wrong, inefficiently, regardless of how it sounds? Great question. Love it. Absolutely love it. In some respects, I feel like you've answered your own question, but let me take it apart a little bit, and I can take it in pieces here. So, high notes can deteriorate with fatigue by the end of a long musical play. Absolutely right. Wait a minute, there was another question before that. No, it's a statement. Okay, so absolutely right. Does that mean one should be careful to avoid singing or practicing too much in the head voice? Yes and no. You want to make it a regular, if it's where you sing, if it is where your repertoire is, then your endurance will have to be built up. But you're not going to start on a Monday, having 5 minutes of endurance, and then by Friday have a half an hour. It's going to take a bit of time. And generally speaking, at least in my experience, it has to be maintained. So if you have like a set of music that's an hour long and the vast majority of it is above the secondo passaggio, then you have to work yourself up to where you have the kind of endurance in order to do that. That means making those vocalizations an ever-increasingly important part of your vocal practice, being certain that you're making good registration event practice so that you are getting into the cricothyroid dominant singing voice effectively and exiting it. The energy requirements above the secondo passaggio can be quite great, but I find that the most challenging part is right at the secondo passaggio, and that's where our technique typically will falter if it's going to falter. So if you primarily focus your technique on exercises that challenge you at the secondo passaggio, so for example, one that I'm very fond of, might pause, have a little bit of a breather, and then get back into it and do it again. If you start to feel fatigued, if you start to hear your intonation falter, if the tone quality starts to deteriorate, it's time to stop for the practice for that day. If you're doing this efficiently, if you are exercising good technique, you might be able to come back to that in an hour's time and repeat that process again. And that's another way that you can gain more overall endurance more quickly, is to do multiple practices on it rather than trying to do it all at one time. In other words, 5 minutes of that there, done with absolutely beautiful technique, is far more valuable than 10 where the last 3 or 4 minutes are kind of dragging and your technique's breaking down, you're getting tired, it's not really holding up very well for you. 5 minutes with really beautiful technique, and then put it away, and then come back. And you're probably going to have to experiment a little bit to see what interval of a break you need. So you might need to wait till the next day. You might be fine an hour later. That's going to depend on where your endurance is at right now and with what efficiency you are currently practicing. It's always possible that we have small inefficiencies or there are potential, problems with the technique. The best way to ascertain that is to get a lesson or, get with a vocal friend or record yourself and then evaluate it a day later. So do the recording. Maybe do a video if you have a mobile device like a smartphone or a tablet of some kind or something like that. Or, most laptops these days have cameras and things. Frame yourself, like maybe get from, the rib cage up so you can observe the expansion of the rib cage, observe the posture of the head over the collarbone and clavicle, observe the location and motion of the larynx. If you cannot observe that externally, then you may want to lightly place your hands there and take note of what, if any, motion you feel. And I want to extremely emphasize light. The fingers are to monitor. We are monitoring. It's like a feather just brushing the throat. It's barely there. You might not notice it. You might not feel anything. It's so light. It's super light. It's like really light. I think I've said light enough at this point. I just really wanted to emphasize light there, apparently. And hopefully that will help. But really, if there's no one in your area or lessons are out of the question from a financial standpoint, it's totally understandable. Take a recording of yourself and then evaluate it after the fact. Give yourself a day or two. Don't record it and then immediately flip it on and start watching it. Give yourself a day or two. See what you observe. See what you hear. And then move forward from there. And finally, do you have tips or perhaps videos back in your archive on how to sing quietly while maintaining good breath support and tone? I struggle with not sounding breathy when the song calls for softer dynamics. Thanks. Appreciate your channel so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes, I do have some tips for phonating quietly. I did a video on that right at the beginning of the pandemic, so it's getting on for about a year old now. And there's also a couple of videos on vocal fold adduction. So the breathiness is chord closure or adduction, the way that the vocal folds come together when we start to sing. So I'll put a couple links in the description and you can check out those videos if you like. But for singing quietly, it's not the same thing as open-mouthed, looking for neutral tone production kinds of singing. So it's not exactly the same thing, but lip trills, straw phonation, those semi-occluded vocalization exercises are generally what I recommend if people need to warm up in environments where being quieter is a priority. So, or something to that effect. You know, you could really use any of my videos and just do the lip trill along with it instead of the vowels. Alternately, using like a straw is another way you can do those exercises. And the NG exercise. Not perfect. It's not exactly the same thing as singing a solid vowel. But I think of all those exercises, the NG one is probably the closest, but it's also probably one of the noisier ones too. It really does help us balance our voices quite nicely. It really feels very, very similar transitioning from NG into ah. And it's better than not vocalizing at all. Let's put it like that. You can hum as well. My concern with humming is that if you allow the jaw to remain shut, where you have the teeth touching, that's a little bit removed from singing. Also, if you press the lips together very, very heavily, you're really squeezing the lips, that too, it just means that we have a greater amount to transition when we go from that occluded or semi-occluded vocalization to singing vowels. And singing vowels is much more similar to singing songs. So the more that we can make our vocalizations like a song, the more that the technique translates. I hope that answers your question. Thank you so much. I love the question and answer sessions, and I love the live events and all these kinds of things. I hope this helps. Once again, if you've subscribed, thank you. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, I hope you'll do so now. And a reminder, Patreon is a great way to support the channel. You can get these PDFs, not this one, actually, I don't release the questions, but I usually write out notes and tips and things like that for these community questions videos on Patreon. But you do get the MP3 and the MP3s of all the exercises that I release here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Jeff. Take really good care of your voices, enjoy singing, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.